All right, more on that good news for Queensland and the brawl between these states and the Commonwealth over the vaccine rollout and all the other big stories. I'm joined from Brisbane now by the host of the front page here on Sky, Peter Gleeson, and from Sydney, host of Chris Smith tonight. You just saw him there filling in for Chris Kenny as well, Chris Smith. Gleeson, I'll go to you first if I can. I tell you, that Deputy Premier is a goose, but how is the situation being read up there now in Queensland? You had all that good news from the Premier. Easter's good to go, she says. What's the mood like?
Well, the mood is buoyant because, you know, we were staring down the barrel of what looked like an Easter from hell, particularly off the back of, you know, some poor numbers early in the week. But look, you know, the big focus, we shouldn't be in this position. That's the first thing I'd like to say. We should have never, ever been in a situation where a lockdown was happening because the haphazard way in which the Queensland Health Department vaccinated wardsmen, pharmacists, before doctors and nurses that were on the front line treating COVID patients is an absolute national scandal. And, you know, the focus has been on whether or not the vaccination rollout has been timely and has been expedient. Well, that's not the issue here in Queensland. There have been plenty of doses of COVID-19 vaccine here in Queensland for frontline workers, but 43% of them hadn't been vaccinated by March 23. You tell me whether or not the Queensland Health Department has some serious questions to answer over that one.
This is a problem, isn't it, Chris? You know, there's a lot we've got right, and I say we need a Royal Commission to look into what has gone well and what we can improve on. But how are we 12 months in having these state health departments make such absolute own goals as they were vaccinating at the bottom of the hospital, punters coming in and out the front door, but not vaccinating the people that were working with the positive cases a few stories up?
How do you get something so wrong? Like, seriously? And it's a pox on both their houses, though, Peter. I know what Peter Gleeson's saying there, and you're right, Pete, but having said all of that, they didn't give priority to the right people. I get all of that. But the fact that the feds don't tell a state how many vials they're getting before they receive the vials is just a breakdown in communication. It is irresponsible. It is not a logistical, anything to be proud of logistically, and yet they've got all of these, you know, the feds have brought in all of these special consultants to try and make the rollout better. Well, we still haven't got all people in aged care vaccinated. Look, we don't have
that's a real worry.
Oh, big worry. And I know this is not a critical emergency right now. We don't have one person in ICU. But seriously, it's an embarrassment. And to watch Greg Hunt this morning try and explain it and sugarcoat it, I couldn't look. It was like a train crash. Yeah,
look, we're heading into winter and it mightn't matter so much in Queensland, but it'll, you know, we see the flu statistics traditionally in Victoria climb going into winter, so this will be the other issue. Some good news, this whole home builder program, I was a bit dubious when it started, particularly in relation to the renovations component, because I thought the thresholds were way, way too high. But I tell you what, 14,000 homes were approved for construction in February, up 20% from the previous month. Some of the other numbers are just phenomenal. As of March 12, in the system, there's 93,000 home builder applications. Now, I said 18,000 only for renos. I think the reno component was a mistake. But that means there's 75,000 new homes coming, and what that means beyond, you know, beautiful new home to move into, it's jobs, Gleeso. It's work for tradies and small business. I think this is a great program.
It's a brilliant program, and it just goes to show that Australians who have basically kept their money in their pocket and haven't travelled overseas during the past 12 months, or haven't been able to travel overseas during the past 12 months, are spending it on their homes. It's keeping tradies in jobs. It's keeping the economy going. I think it's an innovative reform. It's one of the, you know, the bright lights, if you like, of what's been going on during the pandemic. And we know that tradies have been doing it tough in recent years. I mean, it's not an easy trade to get into, and in fact some even moonlight as adult entertainers down at Byron Bay and catch COVID. So I think this is a great thing.
Not that we would know anything about that. Let's move on from that. Malcolm Turnbull, he's only been there a week as the New South Wales government's climate czar, but he's out there pushing for a ban on coal, coal projects in the state of New South Wales. He doesn't want them. It sparked a real fight with the Nationals leader John Barilaro, who says the PM is waging war on the coalition. But I tell you, Chris, where were all of these blokes when it went through the women too, when it went through the cabinet to approve Turnbull? I mean, where was Barilaro then? And I tell you, my phone lights up from grassroots Liberals about lots of different things, but I have never seen a reaction like this. They are filthy that Turnbull is there in this position because they think it just makes it very tough on the Prime Minister. Yeah,
doesn't it tell you how close Matt Keane, the greenest of Liberal MPs at the moment in the country, and Gladys Berejiklian are? It says a lot about the fact that he's basically been given carte blanche to set up this agency and then appoint those that he feels are appropriate. He would be the only person who thinks you can get value out of Malcolm Turnbull. Here they are about to go to the Upper Hunter by-election in probably 7 weeks' time, and the man leading the Zero Emissions Agency is telling people we've got to stop coal. Well, what a really good effort that is. That'll really get them to win the seat and retain the numbers in Parliament. What a stupid thing to say. At the same time, there are 23 applications just in New South Wales for new coal mines. Now, even the merchant banker would see and understand the rules of supply and demand. Someone putting millions of dollars behind those applications think there's still demand for coal as baseload source. Well, look at the ALP this week, Gleeson. They formalised their support for the coal industry. They had to. They know exactly where the blue-collar unions are on this, and they spoke very loudly. But at the same time, you've got Chris Bowen saying, we are absolutely the party of net zero emissions by 2050. So Labor and Turnbull are on a unity ticket. Well, surprise, surprise on that. But this is a really bipolar position from Labor. This is what happened last time. They said one thing in Balmain and another thing in Bundaberg. Is it going to wash, do you think, though, with the Queensland coal workers?
No, not at all. Have a look at what happened at the last election. They didn't believe Dodgy Bill. They just didn't believe him because, as you said, he said one thing in St Kilda and the other thing in Gladstone. I mean, this is the one big issue that the Labor Party is a hostage to the left on. The left run the show. I mean, let's face it. Their leader, federal leader, is from the left faction. The left faction dominates their policy agenda in this country, and they can't get themselves away from the fact that they're chasing this crazy renewables target in 2030, and it will affect coal mining jobs. We saw what happened in Joel Fitzgibbon's seat. We saw what happened in Dawson and Leichhardt and those sorts of seats. Flynn and Capricornia. It's the one area where Australian voters really understand that on the one hand, you've got the Labor Party who want to kill coal jobs, and on the other hand, you've got the coalition who want to retain coal jobs.
Chris, I want to go to another issue. You know how easy it is to check in with a QR code in New South Wales, ACT, Queensland, pretty much right around the country, but Victoria. They still operate business by business separate systems in Victoria. Now, the Andrews government's having a big blitz on businesses, just making sure they're doing all the right things. This is in the Herald Sun today, but why on earth is the state government targeting businesses when the state government should do what every other state government has done interstate and have one single uniform system? They'll start finding these businesses, but it's not their fault that the whole system is so backward in Victoria. And I remember raising this, and I think you did too, in about July when they started to count down the days, the weeks until the lockdown was going to be lifted in Melbourne. And we started to say, well, I hope they've done their homework on QR codes. I hope they've worked out the single system that operates in New South Wales. But once again, Daniel Andrews doesn't want to know what New South Wales has done with hotel quarantine. He knew better. Daniel Andrews doesn't want to know what New South Wales is doing with one single system of QR codes. Nah, he knows better. Well, he doesn't know better, which is why when someone gets infected, if they're in Victoria, the contact tracers have a lot more chasing to do because they've got to work out exactly what QR code was at that particular venue when that person was there. Absolutely. They've got to contact the venue. In New South Wales, there's no contacting of the venue. They go straight to the Service New South Wales software. They realise A person has been at B venue and they look it up and they know exactly who else was there at the same time. Presto. I know. I say to Victorians, it's not a case of if there will be another outbreak and potential lockdown here. It is a case of when, unless they get that right. Helicopter parents. Now, both of you got kids. Chris, you got some young ones and some older ones. Gleeso,
Yep.
I don't know if you're at helicopter parent stage, but there's reports out today, a Sydney careers expert says there's cases of parents weighing into their children's lives in their late 20s and 30s. Would you knock on the door of your kid's employer, Gleeso, and sort of go into bat for them?
No way in the world. And I hark back to your 50th. No way in the world. I hark back to your 50th the other night, Peter, when you said you had a wonderful childhood growing up in the country. So did I. I had a wonderful childhood. I made mistakes. I got out and grazed my knee. I had stitches when I was 5. You know, kids have got to be able to make mistakes, do their thing, learn from it, and move on. If you've got helicopter parents, you're putting them in cotton wool, and it doesn't end well. And I think, Chris Smith, you'd agree. I mean, you've just got to let kids run their own race these days.
I think when they're young, you've got to make sure they go to the shop and buy things. You've got to put them outside of their comfort zone and say, hang on, you've got to look after yourself down the track. Look, I made a lot of mistakes as a parent, and I still make mistakes as a parent, but one of the things I think I've done okay with is to try and get them to be independent, self-sufficient at probably an earlier age than what most people or most kids would be. And, you know, I'm not going to ring up the boss of my 18-year-old who works now and tell the boss, oh, she won't be in today.
Who does that?
I won't be doing any of that. I won't be negotiating a contract for her either.
No.
Right, gentlemen, have a lovely Easter. Chris Smith, Peter Gleeson. My Liberals, I tell you, they're saying how much sense you're making tonight and that I look like a licorice all sorts. So there you go. There you go. Have a lovely Easter.
Same to you, Peter.
Good to see you, Peter.
They don't muck around. They don't muck around.